is Lisa Cairns 12, and just send me a request, and then what will I do? I will friend you, and then if I have time, I'll answer your question. If not, then you have to try another time. I do these sessions every Wednesday night, French time at 6 p.m, and every Sunday night at 6 p.m, French time. If you want to come to one of my events, the next events I'm doing is in Barcelona. I just have to pull up my website. It's in Barcelona. And I think it's on the 14th. The 14th and 15th of October or something like that. The 14th and 15th of October. That's in Barcelona. So 2 days of talks there. And then I'm doing an intensive 14-day retreat the 18th to the 1st of November. And you can also come for the first week. It's in a really beautiful area in the mountains behind Malaga. So it'll be really beautiful weather. And they do organic food, so it'll be very nice. Then I do an online retreat on the 19th of November, which is a way that you can talk in a small group, and it won't be recorded, so you can say whatever you like. And that's 4 hours. So I do 2 hours, and then we have a 3-hour break, and then 2 hours. And then on the 17th and 18th of December, I do talks in London. So 2 days of talks in London. What was I going to say about the talks in London? Oh yeah, I was doing talks in Milan, but I decided to cancel them because it's just too hard to fly or drive with Khaleesi such a short way. So then I also do talks in Tiruvannamalai, India, the 30th of December till the 20th of January. For 3 weeks, I'll do 1 talk a day in Tiruvannamalai. So you can come and join that. And that's all by donation. And also, I'm always having people ask me for discounts. And I try my best to discount people as much as I can. But obviously, I can't pay for their accommodation, their travel. And so if anyone's rich out there and feels like they would like to donate to somebody, I can put you in contact. There's a few people that want to come to my Spanish retreat but can't afford the basic costs of it. So if it's a discount person, I won't charge anything, so you don't have to pay me anything. It's just they need to cover their accommodation and flights and everything. Which is a really beautiful thing to do. Somebody offered recently to pay for somebody else to be on the online retreat. So if you really can't afford the online retreat, then somebody has paid for a space for you, so get in contact. But don't do it because you'd rather spend your money on a jacket. Do it because you genuinely can't afford it. Sometimes I give people discounts to my retreats and help them get money to come on the retreat, and then they turn up in a Mercedes, and I'm like, selective spending. I have a feeling that it might be going out of time. It's okay, I've got a way to fix it. It's not syncing with the video. They are in sync. So Carla says it's not in sync, and Ramon says it is in sync. If it's not in sync, write to me on Skype, because I will change over to a lower resolution video, which will sync. It's in sync. In Los Angeles, it's in sync. Carla, I just think it's your internet at the moment. It's such a better camera if I use this one, but if it's causing a problem, please let me know. So I think that non-duality is the most beautiful subject there is. I'm totally in love with the subject and get so excited talking about it. I think it's so beautiful to really collapse into what's happening. And in what's happening, in this moment, it becomes apparent that there's nobody having an experience here. There is wholeness, boundlessness having an experience. There's nobody that's been having a separate experience. This has been one energy's expression. This has been life's expression, which is totally full and complete. It never felt incomplete. It's so creative life that it's created humans that feel incomplete. It creates a human that over time it's developed self-awareness, and through developing self-awareness and language, it began to believe that it was a thought. It was something in time. And then there became an energy in the body that expressed that. I am a good person, I am a bad person, I am a right person, I am a wrong person, I am a tall person. And the way that our language works is in comparison, is in comparing to another object. So, I am good in comparison to this person, I am bad in comparison to that person, I am right in comparison to that person. Without a comparison, we wouldn't be able to define ourselves. I am happy compared to what I was yesterday. I am sad compared to what I was yesterday. I would like to be more happy in the future. Everything we think about ourselves, when you really look at it and really analyze it, it's all about seeking and comparison. What we're seeking to be. We identify with these certain characteristics, with these certain behaviors, and then we seek to complete those behaviors. So if you identify with sailing a boat around the world, then you seek to complete that. If you identify with being powerful, then you seek to complete that. If you identify with being lazy, then maybe you seek to become less lazy. If you identify with being a victim, you'll seek an abuser, or you'll seek to not be a victim. Khaleesi's just barking, I have to let her in. Nope, she's satisfied again. She's so funny. She's so beautiful. She sometimes just likes me to have the doors open all the time so she can go in and out. Not aware that there might be heat inside and cold outside. So, why isn't the door open? She's becoming so well behaved. It's amazing. She's 4 now and she's just so good. She just, when you get a dog into a routine, they get into conditioned behaviour. So now when I'm walking along the road with her, I often walk along the road around here without a lead on. And when a car comes, I point to her to the side of the road, and then I stand with her so she can't run out in front of the car. And now, as soon as she hears a car, she goes to the side of the road. It's so cool. Okay, what was I saying? So if you seek to be the good person, then you'll always be seeking out that. You'll be seeking out to show that you're good. And you'll be demonizing other people to show that you're good. You'll be putting other people down and holding yourself up higher. And it doesn't mean that you don't do it generally. Like if somebody smashed into your car, you need to define that that's not good. Or if somebody's stolen all your money, then that can be defined. But it's when you identify, it's when this energy identifies, this is who I am, and the world really is seen like that. That you are good and they are bad. Hang on. In she comes. You're not going out again, Easy, if you come in. You're not going out again. Okay, come on in then. Wow, you ate it all. That's amazing. What a good girl. You a good girl, are you? You a good girl? Yeah. She's a good girl. Yeah, you good girl. You good girl. And it's amazing what seeking does and how it veils everything. So on the surface, you might feel like you like to be social and you like to go out. But often if that's investigated, like the socializing and wanting to go out and wanting to connect and wanting partners, when it's really investigated, deep down you feel a deep sense of loneliness, and that loneliness is always looking outside. And then when you get company, when you socialize and when you're with people and when you have a partner, that feels fulfilled. So it's like great pleasure. It doesn't mean that bodies can't be social bodies, but it's just investigating what's there and what the seeker does. It's so amazing the way it plays. It's so sneaky. And if you want to see yourself as a good person, then even if you're acting badly or being a pain in the butt, you'll still seek out what the other person's done, and that you're a good person, they're a bad person. So you'll always be looking in that light. If you're wanting to be successful at work, and there's always this drive for being successful at work, there's more than likely deep down this lack there, this sense that you're not enough if you don't do that, that this adds to you in some way. And it's so strong, it's not even, like I say it in thoughts, but it's not even something that you can think about. You can't even think about it. It's like an impulse in the body. And it's so strong to go out and get or do. Be something, be something. You wouldn't even be conscious of it. What the person is conscious of is what it's going for, the woman it's going for, or the object it's going for. It's never conscious of what's underneath that there's discomfort or anxiety. When it gets into this subject, maybe it becomes more conscious of that, because the teacher points it out. And in a way, that's an important part. Even though there is nobody that awakens, the person eats itself, and part of the way that it gets deconstructed is that these patterns become really clear, and then the patterns stop acting themselves out. The reason that they act themselves out is because they're unconscious. When it's seen really clearly that seeking for the lover or seeking for the friends or seeking for the food is never going to complete you, it simply brings pleasure, and pleasure's okay and you can move towards pleasure, but it only brings pleasure, then that energy begins to die. The illusion can only carry on while it's hidden. When it comes to light, it can't carry on, and then it's not the person that awakens. Awakening simply is already there, but as that person begins to collapse in, then it's seen as it is. That this is stillness expressing itself in movement. That this is that amness, and that amness is everywhere. Like that sense of being is everywhere and everything, and it's experiencing itself, but through these bodies. It's only this energy of the seeker and the separate entity which creates this feeling of being inside the body. It's so amazing. It's so amazing. All suffering comes from seeking. And it's not about you becoming not a seeker. You'll become depressed if you try to not be a seeker. While you're there, that's what you do. You seek. It's like telling a rabbit that it's not allowed to hop. While the seeker is there, that's what it does. It seeks. So it'll seek for this subject. It will seek for friends, lovers, money, whatever it is. you can never awaken, because who are you if you're not that seeker? I am Lisa and I am tall. The reason that that person defines itself as tall is because it's got to define itself as something in order to look for something else. That's not true. That's not who you are. That person appears in this, the character appears in this, but that's not the actual experiencer. And there can be a recognition that that person is only an appearance and not a separate entity. And then the energy later on after that normally collapses of seeking, of that constant looking in time for satisfaction. All that discomfort that you feel in the body, that exhaustion, comes from the layer upon layer of the seeker. It's so exciting. So what is it now that looks? What is it now that hears? What is it now that feels? Don't look for an experience. It's not in experience. It's there. It's experiencing it. It cannot be seen, yet it is seeing, yet it is hearing, yet it is looking. But it cannot be grasped. The seeker can't turn around and look at it. The seeker's an experience appearing in it. Everything you think about yourself is seen. So you've got this person in the body and it feels like I'm this person and I choose and I'm behind the eyes and I move my attention. Oh, she's saying going to feelings. I'm moving my attention. It goes into feelings. But notice that that person that feels like it's in there, that feels like it's choosing and experiencing, is being experienced. It's being experienced. That's so exciting. It's such a different way from living. And in a way, this is activism. This is the social activism that so many seekers want. Like, this is the way that society changes, by the collapse of living in this separate reality. Okay, so if anyone has any questions. Hey, Jessie. Nobody's got any questions. That's okay. So if you ask me, you have to ask me. I can see there's people asking me on the YouTube chat, but that's not how I read it. You have to friend me on Skype, which is Lisa Cairns 12, and write to me on there. It's too hard for me to try and look at the questions in the chat. So Michael says, would you describe the me as a problem addict? Sure, that's one of its characteristics, but that's not its only characteristics. It's also addicted to sex, it's addicted to food, addicted to friends, addicted to work, addicted to success, addicted to money. And the reason that it obsesses about problems is because the reason that we began to talk as humans and communicate talk and communicate as humans was, sorry, I'm just getting confused. The reason that we began to talk and communicate was because it helped with our survival. So we could recognize a problem. So the problem would be there wasn't enough fish, or the rain washed away the soil and the houses were falling down. So we could communicate about a problem and we could work out a way to fix it. So you could say the origin of language and the way we speak and communicate was about problem solving. And that's what it was for. But then as we began to identify and believe we were someone, we began to obsess about fixing ourselves and fixing our life and happiness. You know, before we spoke as humans, we didn't have any idea about happiness, so we didn't avoid any experience. We didn't want to be happy. Khaleesi, my beautiful, beautiful dog, who I'm so in love with, she has no desire to be happy because she doesn't know what that means and she has no sense of it. So every experience is welcome. But then as we began to speak and think, we began to look at our experience and we said, okay, now I feel happy because I'm eating ice cream and I want to always feel that sensation of happiness. And this is where the seeker begins to play, always in that game. So I'm sitting here listening to Lisa and, oh, it's a little bit cold, I want it to be warmer, or there's no sunshine, or it's raining, or I want to eat something. I don't feel happy. Why am I not feel happy? Let her look into the camera. If she just looked in the camera. And the seeker's always thinking about its own experience. Khaleesi never thinks about her own experience. That is just life happening to her. But she can never know herself like a human can. Even though she's liberated, she's free, she can never know herself like an identified human, an identified and then a waking up human can, because of that illusion that appears. Then when you wake up, you know what you're not, and therefore by that you know what you are. Whereas Khaleesi never has that dynamic. She just is. So freedom is always the movement from being this person to that boundlessness, what you always were, but the intellect carries on, so you can still think about problems. So the separate self is addicted to problems, but not because it's bad or wrong or this dirty devil ego. It's just because that's what it was designed to do. And so then when identification happened, the person got fixated on its experience, on having a good experience. That's why we have people always competing about experiences and trying to be the richest, because trying to be the most developed or whatever it is. Because we believe we are something. Okay, any more questions? I can't grasp that what I experience, everything, is what the observer is experiencing. How can there be no experience of the observer? Correct. Well, because experience is separate. Experience implies that something's experiencing it. So all there is experiencing. So you can't experience the observer. Who would? Who would experience the observer? All there is observer looking now. It's observer talking, observer seeing. But you can't find the point or the location of that observer because the observer isn't different from what it sees. So the seeing and the seen is the same thing. I think I've bottomed out. This is from Scott. Bookshelves filled with books on spirituality, from Hung Pu to Nisargadatta, loads of meditation retreats, meditating much the day, living by myself in nature, constantly questioning who I am, and now I'm tired and still the mind gives trouble with thoughts of lack. Run out of moves. Thanks, Scott. Well, how long have you been doing that, Scott? But yeah, of course you run out of moves because you never get there. You is an appearance happening in that freedom that's always there. So you aren't ever going to get there. But this is about the energetic collapsing back into itself, its honesty. Often when we're seeking in spirituality, we're seeking for a new story to live by, and we're seeking for a new person to be. And this is about a collapsing in to what's ever happening. And even in spirituality, we don't want to do that. We still want to seek. We don't actually want to feel the pain of that seeking energy that's not fulfilled. So that loneliness that most of us feel, would rather run towards relationships or go on the computer or on Facebook. And even when you meditate, I'm sure you're most probably using some technique to meditate, trying to avoid what actually the experience is. You're trying to use some technique in order to get somewhere. And this really is being totally honest and genuine and falling back into the experience. And lately I've been talking about moving your attention onto the feelings in the body. But that one that moves its attentions onto the feelings isn't the one that wakes up. But by doing that, I'm trying to make it clear what that seeker is doing, how that seeker is always trying to avoid experience. And actually, when that seeker doesn't try to manipulate it or move away or run away from it, then the energy dissipates or a change happens. But it's not actually that seeker that's doing it because it never existed. And I'm not talking about the seeker doing it in the hope that one day it will become free. Normally, by the time that seeker is prepared to look at actually what's happening, it's exhausted, it's tired of trying to run from what it is. This is total acceptance of all the suffering, of all the seeking that's going on. Conduted. I don't know what that says. So Jessie says, not a problem, but not a question, but I saw so clearly that the brain is conduit, full stop. Conducted? I'm not sure what you mean by that. So Lisa Cairns 12, if people want to call in. I can see people were asking how to do that. Lisa Cairns 12. So knowing this is to consciously experience the experiencer. You can't know this. It's when the clouds pass, it's seen. That's part of the awakening. And then there is this collapsing of this separate energy that's holding amness inside the body, because everything is that emness, that beingness, that aliveness. Everything is self. You think that, so there's this amness, and then this amness identifies with things, with people, with ideas, and you think you're inside here, and your amness belongs inside here, but that sense of being that's always been there is actually everywhere. It doesn't belong to anyone. Everywhere and nowhere. Lawrence Burnett test. I got your test. Whoopee. So I have no questions, which is nice. None. So Keith says, do you think you have to be seeking to listen to your talks? Would someone who's no longer seeking be motivated to listen to you? Sure. I think that people that are no longer seeking can listen just to the joy of it. I don't really tend to listen to other speakers, but maybe because I'm a speaker myself, I like. But recently I was watching a video of Gangaji. She has such a beautiful energy and such a lovely voice. When I was a seeker, I always went to male teachers because there wasn't the possibility to go to female teachers. There was all male teachers at that time, and Gangaji came to London once, I think, when I was living in London seeking. But when I was in India, there was never female teachers there. It was all male teachers. And so I don't really know the female teachers that are out there. So recently I decided to look some up. And Gangaji I knew of, and in the past I used to find her a bit too spiritual. I had an ego against that. Like I'd be like, I wanted to rebel, and she was too clean cut for me. But I don't mind now. A lot of the women seem like they're quite clean cut in their speakers. And I like the cheeky monkey. I was born in the year of the monkey. And I was always called a monkey growing up. Miss Monkey. As well as my parents also called me this Lisa Pizza Pudding and Pie, which God knows what that means. But when I did this Osho workshop once when I was younger, this is, when I was like 25 or 26, you had to, before you went in, you had to write down your nickname. And I had no idea why we were writing it down, but I just wrote down Lisa Pizza Pudding and Pie. I still get called it. And then the whole of the workshop, everyone had to call me Lisa Pizza Pudding and Pie. Funny enough, I really like pizza. I don't eat it that much because I tend to eat more healthier. Every so often I treat myself, and if I'm going to treat myself, it's pizza. I do enjoy pizza. Oh, and chips. French fries I enjoy as well, and potato chips. I remember Ramesh once, this lady was interviewing him while I was there, and she said to him, after she'd asked him these deep and vital questions, she said, "And what is your favourite what is your favourite food?" And straight away he's rocking on his rock chair, very serious face. "Pizza!" He goes, "Pizza, of course. What else? Pizza." Couldn't be anything else. He was always very matter of fact. Yeah, so I was talking before, there's no questions, so I'll just go off on a rant about female teachers. And it's interesting looking them up, because the female teachers obviously speak a lot more about feelings, because obviously females apparently scientifically have a lot more feelings than men. And also the way that men are conditioned in our society to not talk or feel feelings. And I think it's a really good thing, because as a speaker you always attract the opposite sex. You can go to any talk and you'll notice that if a male's giving a talk, there will be a lot more females in the audience. And then if a female's giving talks, you'll have half and half. And then I know that sounds crazy that you'll only have half and half, but there's more females into spirituality and this subject than there is men. A lot more females. So when you have half and half, that means really you're getting more males coming. And I think that it's to do with sometimes and often you fall in love with your teacher, so you often pick the opposite sex, or there's that element of falling in love or something. And maybe it's easier from the opposite sex because it doesn't feel like too much competition or something. You don't want to compete against them so much. But not all the time. It can also just be a falling in love, non-romantically. And so by that, I think it's really good, because I think that if all the female teachers are speaking a lot more about feelings, I think it's good for the women, but I think it's also good for the men, because I think a part of this waking up process, particularly for men, is becoming really honest to what you feel. Often men are about action or movement or doing something, but becoming really honest to what's actually happening, rather than just acting out the game of what you want. So, but I can imagine it also puts a lot of men off. They're like, ugh, ugh, all this feeling talk. What do you feel? I'm fine. I'm fine. Everything's good. It's not happening, so everything's good. There is no body, so everything's good. It's the flow. Everything's good. And the body can't move. Everything's good. But what do you feel? I feel fine. I am fine. What do you feel in your body? Fine. You don't feel tension? No. I'm doing an impression of men. Not all men. I'm not trying to put you down, guys. But just an impression of a lot of what I come across. And you might have noticed it on Ustream when I ask guys how they feel. I don't feel anything. I'm fine. Because they for so many years have been told they're only allowed to feel anger or falling in love with a woman, and all other emotions aren't acceptable. And so they begin to really cut down and just live up in this area, so the body just numbs out. So to them, they can interpret that as peace, stillness, but it's not actually. It's cutting off. And so coming back in touch with the feelings is a really important part to that. What the body actually feels. And then sometimes, after working with a guy, after a while he'll be like, actually my body feels tense, even though I've been looking at him, he's been like, it takes weeks, and then suddenly he's like, oh, I feel a little tense. Oh, do you now? Right. I'm such a sloucher, so every time I sit down I always have these bra straps or straps of whatever top, you see, like they fit when I stand up, but when I sit down it's like If you could see the way I'm sitting, I'm so unelegant. I was never designed really to be a female. I was not really designed either to be a male. You know, in old civilizations, they used to have 3 genders. They used to have male, and they used to have female, and then they had another gender which wasn't defined, which I think is super cool. So that gender could be a woman that dresses like a man and behaves like a man, or a man that dresses and behaves like a woman. It could be somebody, I forget the name of it now, that doesn't associate with either gender. It could be with somebody that feels like a man and a woman. So they had 3 genders. So when I was at university, I studied it for a while. I forget the name of the book. It was like 3 genders or something. And we had it in Europe, but I think we wiped it out first in Europe. And then I think when they went over to America, they discovered 3 genders and they wiped it out there. And Thailand wasn't conquered. And even though it's mocked a lot and taken the mickey out of, but in Thailand, they still kind of have 3 genders, even though with this integration and change and everything, it's kind of mocked and laughed at, but they have what we call and laugh at as ladyboys, which isn't funny at all. It's totally normal that you might be born as a man but feel like a female. That's a normal thing, but our society is so repressive of it and doesn't allow that to be expressed at all. And I think actually when I come across men and women and do these talks, I do think that sometimes people that are suffering the most are like men that have a very strong feminine side, or females that have a very strong masculine side, because they've been told and grown up in a society and it's been like, you have to be like that or you have to be like this, and they've struggled to find their place. Like I don't really have a desire to have children and to get married. I've never had that desire. Maybe when I was really young I had a desire for children, because I remember at like 9 or 10 playing with a doll, but as I got older I didn't have that desire like my friends did, and I'm treated like I'm crazy or insane in society, like because even though I live in one of the most advanced, well, maybe not the south of France, but I come from London, just outside London, which is maybe one of the so-called advanced cities in the world, even more advanced than a lot of the cities that I've been into America socially. And even there, it's when I went to a Ilango, he just calls repetitively and then covers up my whole screen. So I went to this Hindu, and I was called autistic. So, and the ladies gossiped about me behind my back because I was the only one there that didn't have the urge to marry. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have the urge for kids, and I was a vegetarian stroke vegan. And they literally seriously thought that I was autistic on the autism scale, because we haven't got a place for it in our society. So they're like, what is wrong with her? A lot of men that I come across don't believe me. If I go into relationships, they don't believe it. And it has a funny effect on men. Men don't know how to deal with it. They're so used to women wanting to get married and to have kids. And I know it's hard for my parents in front of their friends. I mean, this is how bizarre it is, the way we set up the genders. But I think it's easier for a woman to be more masculine than for a man to be more feminine. I think it's worse in our society for a man to be more feminine. I think this is totally unacceptable. So then if you grow up and you're trying to not be that because you don't think it's acceptable or lovable, and you're always being told you're not allowed to be that, then of course your sense of self is going to become very negative and have a lot of suffering. You're going to always feel like there's something wrong with you, like you're disgusting or bad or not lovable. And it's not true at all. At all. And it also becomes difficult in relationships because, so if you're a really feminine guy, like a lot of women don't know how to handle that. They've had no role images of that. So therefore they might try and make the man more masculine, or they might love it as well. And also for a female, if she's more masculine being in a relationship, the guy doesn't know how to deal with it. So often they feel demasculated or not strong enough. So they try to be stronger. It's so crazy because we haven't got those images. We've got more acceptability of a woman now being more masculine. The third gender. But I think we killed it in Europe by, I think it was Christian Church that killed it. We don't even have record or history of it, but we had that in our society, or very little of it. Anyway, a nice little rant by Lisa. So, do we have any more questions? Elango is desperate to speak. Hi, Manuela. Okay. We can speak, Manuela. So now, guys, tell me if it goes out of sync, because now is the time that it could possibly.
Hello?
Hey, Manuela.
Hey.
So now, guys, tell me if
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. And people can see your picture, just so you know. They can't see your face, but they can see your picture. Hang on.
Shall I put my video on?
If you want to, but people will be able to see you if you do.
I don't know.
If you want to stay anonymous, then you can as well. It's totally up to you. But they can all hear you, I think, as long as I've got all my audios in. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll stay anonymous for now. The only thing I have with that is that then I'll be all over YouTube. Like, thoughts came like, well, what if someone from work sees me and they think I'm...
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, if someone from work would see me, then that means they're watching this, so that would be great.
Yeah. I think that it's all gone out of time. Can you just give me a second to check?
Sure, yeah.
This is the problem I had last time. Just have to check. Hello?
Hello?
Hi, I'm not sure if it's in sync. We might just have to... I'm not sure if anyone could tell me if it's still in sync. Oh. Gone out of sync. Yeah, it's when I use Skype that it goes out of sync. Okay, so I have to change video now. FaceTime video. Hello? Right, I should be back in sync now. So, there we go.
Okay, cool. Whatever, I'll put my camera on too, why not?
Oh, well, it's all just on me now, so they can't see you.
Oh, okay. No worries. Whatever. Yeah, I don't know if I have any specific questions. I kind of wanted to chat again.
Yeah.
And connect. And also, one thing I wanted to say before anything else is I'm just so grateful that you're doing this twice a week. Like, it feels like such a blessing to be able to listen to it. And I find myself really looking forward to it.
Oh, nice. That's really nice to hear.
Okay. Yeah, there's really a lot of appreciation. Like, it just feels so supportive somehow.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, because otherwise after retreats or after you meet people in events and you become really close, then there's no connection again until the next event. So it's a really, really beautiful thing to do. And I think that as technology gets better, more people will be doing it. So it'll be one day, maybe in 10 years' time, it will be as if we're all sitting in the same room. We'll put on our little headset. It'll be so amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and there's this sense of familiarity also after having met you actually personally in summer.
Yeah.
There's like more closeness or familiarity than if it had been just, watching this the whole time.
Yeah.
So there's, yeah. I thought that if I didn't call online, I would probably do a session again sometime because it's just, and I was really so bummed that I couldn't come to Spain this time.
Yeah.
Just wasn't in the flow, but I'll be looking for your retreats next year whenever that happens.
Yeah. It's I just have to turn your volume down, but yeah, it's a lot though to keep taking time off work, and that one's quite a long one as well. I'm just decreasing your volume. It's blasting my headphone system. Oops, it's going the wrong way. Okay, so sorry, we can carry on again now.
Is it better now?
Yeah. I'm sure that everyone that was having headsets on a moment ago was like, ah! From your voice. Was blowing their eardrums.
Am I actually on with camera or
yeah,
not?
you're on the camera now, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
So everyone can see you. But it's just very little, so they can't see you very detailed.
Yeah, it's okay. It's funny, it's a little courage step of, oh, whatever. Even if I show up on YouTube afterwards, doesn't matter.
And if anyone freaks out afterwards, I'm so happy to delete it. Like, if anyone really wants it off afterwards, then I'm always happy to.
So I wonder, like, what I would want to talk about or explore with you. And I mean, as you know, all the questions I've asked so far have kind of involved the topic of flip-flopping, which has been so present to me lately, and that's still been very much ongoing since the retreat. Like, right after the retreat, I felt actually some very beautiful openings and times of it comes in phases, like times that felt very free and open and blissful and just a lot of gratitude. And I think generally I could say that there's, if I was to look at it as a process, I think I could describe it as a heart opening.
Yeah.
Like, and that comes sometimes, or it feels to me like it comes with feeling more and more, like just feeling everything more intensely. And I already thought I was somebody who felt too much or was very emotionally dominated. And it just seems to be getting more and more, not less. And
more and more emotions?
Yeah, like sometimes when they're positive, or like when it's love, it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's love or joy. But at the same time, there's more of feeling everything viscerally in the body as well, like the anxiety, the pain, the sadness.
Yeah.
And
and
then recently,
I think that's really good. I think that's really beautiful that it's all becoming more and more intense. I know that it's not so good when it's suffering energy and when you feel really contracted, but I think it's that you're beginning to totally stop running from anything. So then, and it can be so overwhelming if something comes like fear or anxiety. But carry on.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that these waves seem to come kind of uncontrollably lately, and much more so. I also started to look at it pragmatically, like this topic of depression came up lately, also hearing some of the people who call in talk about it. And it was very funny because I contacted the caller from last week, Paul, to send some resources. And the first thing that he wrote back, like he sent a link about a woman who's a psychiatrist in the States who uses a natural approach for balancing the brain chemistry. And it was so in sync with exactly what I had been researching and wanted to send him. So it's almost like a gift came back immediately after I'd reached out to offer support. And I started to read this book that you wrote and really recognized a lot of the symptoms. But for me, it's still just a word. Like, it's just recently that I could call it depression. And there's so many types of this, whatever this is. And for some people, it's more like they're not in touch with their feelings and they feel like sleepy and dead inside and are kind of like, a little bit dead. That's one side. And for me, it's the opposite, like intense feelings. And for instance, lately I've been feeling a lot of sadness, like a lot of blues, and hypersensitive to anything. Like a funny thing that happened was that I discovered this musician, um, and actually this is something that happened my whole life. Like certain pieces of music or musicians, especially those that have a very intense emotional or melancholic touch, it's almost like you would get under my skin, and I lose myself in it.
Yeah.
And then I have the music playing in for days,
Yeah.
and I just, in my head, I mean, because I can't even listen to it anymore. It becomes like I get so absorbed in the emotion. And I found it so beautiful and touching to feel that rawness and transparency of what this musician was transmitting and expressing. But then I couldn't sleep again for days, or I felt super sad, like super. I think it resonated or it triggered something in me,
Yeah.
that a mood that's in there anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think that when waking up, you become a lot more sensitive to emotions and to feelings. And I think that that the two major feelings underneath everything is loneliness, this sense of lack, loneliness, that you're alone and there's this big world out there. And the detail in which the seeker is avoiding that is amazing. So that energy coming out of the body is so full force. But I also think because of identification and because of this separate self, it has disbalanced the body. So I think doing something like that lady, I think I was the one that recommended it to him actually. So I think that lady, I really like the idea of that. I think she takes a DNA swab and then tests and works out exactly your balance and what you need more of. Because I think of years and years of identification, then like your hormones might be out of balance, because if you're repeating a story of lack, then it's going to be, and if you're feeling lots of fear, then it's going to be letting off lots of adrenaline, which will be making your hormones overwork. I think adrenaline comes from hormones, but I'm not sure. I get confused about these. Like, yeah, I'm not sure where it all comes from. And so I think that doing something like that simultaneously while listening to this subject is really good idea, because what's happened once you've identified, so once the identification's happened, then over time, the seeker is running away from this loneliness, this lack, and trying to avoid fear. And what it does by doing that is it encourages those two feelings. And then the body's like got used to that habit. So your whole chemical balance has changed as well. So I think that like looking at the body and what the body needs and balancing the body is really important. My way of doing it was Chinese medicine, but everybody has to find their own way. And still now I find that my body can get out of balance, and I'm sure it's because of the habit of so many years of being identified. So my tendency is stomach problems, and in Chinese medicine, the reason of stomach problems, well, there's lots of reasons of stomach problems. It's hereditary, but one of them is that your mind is out of balance. And when it says your mind is out of balance, not like chemically out of balance, but thinking. And so I was very, very badly dyslexic when I was growing up, and I really struggled with writing and reading. And this is something, dyslexia and stomach are very, I don't think dyslexia is a bad thing. I think it gives other good qualities. But getting confused by words, getting confused by ideas, but also having a strong attraction to that, and being I also have a really, which is weird that I have dyslexia, but I have a really high intellect as well. So those sort of combinations, high intellect and also having dyslexia, often the stomach gets out of balance and you can produce too much acid, or it can produce a lot of tiredness and sleepiness. And the Buddhists always used to call me, I just have to plug in, they used to call me when I did Buddhist, they called me I had sloth and torpor, I think it was, which basically means laziness and sleepiness. So when I was balancing my body and studying Chinese medicine, one thing I really did was work a lot on the stomach and my eating and doing exercise to improve digestion, taking stuff to help with digestion.
Yeah, that used to be and still is one of my sensitive points as well. But when the feelings come, because I know you also asked other callers, like where do you feel it in the body, or what do you expect? What are you asking underneath? And for me, they always are in the heart and solar plexus area.
Yeah.
And last week, it was really funny when Paul asked you the question about should I take an antidepressant. I had to laugh because actually that was something I was considering too when I wanted to chat with you about, although I know you can't actually give a yes or no, but I was just, like there's this hope that there would be a magic pill that you just take and then the pain goes away. And I think I'll leave that as a last resort. I'm definitely doing the amino acid and other balancing stuff first. But there's been really this onslaught of just sensitivity and a lot of visceral intensity, I could call it, or pain that comes up that manifests around the heart and solar plexus. And when I look at it closer, it definitely comes down to lack and fear. So I resonate a lot with what you say. And then I can see how it searches on the outside for validation or for something that would take that edge off. And actually, these are feelings I've had all my life. So there's another interesting thing I've been looking at that I think I mentioned to you before, and that's personality types or different suits that we seem to come into the world with. So I found the Enneagram incredibly helpful. And there's one type that describes exactly what I experienced throughout my whole life, and that's a very strong tendency towards melancholy and intense emotions, and maybe even over dramatizing emotions and seeing things a bit blue or so at least that helped me realize that, well, this is kind of a pattern that awareness seems to manifest through different bodies, and I'm not the only one that actually has this programming or conditioning or wiring, and I don't know where it comes from, whether it's genetic or conditioning based or anything. And so, then I would think maybe, well, why do other people have it easier? Or it's the victim story that comes in then. And the one thing that why non-duality helps a lot lately or resonate is just to keep remembering that even while I seem to struggle with these feelings or waves that come, that it's just happening, like as if life decided that this body-mind journey is in this way. So for whatever reason, be it karma or
and it's really not that body has it harder. Like that's really not the way it is. That it just seems that way, that this, like that's just your imagination. But if you were to go into other bodies, there's completely different way of feeling and different way of being. It's not that yours is worse. It's just that's what the victim story or that mentality does. Is it looks at it in that light. Like there is. Sorry, I just moved your picture so you. The other stories could be better, and it's really not like that, because everybody has their karma, and even if on the surface they're making out that they're happy, I would suggest that anybody that's identified there is discomfort in the body, they might not be aware of it because they might just be aware of the surface level of seeking, so only what they're after, but underneath there's always discomfort. And they have worries and anxieties, but they might not even be conscious of that. Like I used to think when I first got into the subject, but actually years after, every so often I would think I was better off not knowing. Like when you begin to know, it's like, oh, because it's really, this path really takes commitment, because that identification is so strong. It's so strong, not just yours, but anybody's identification. The seeker will do anything to move out of lack, of loneliness, of any sense of danger. And not that danger, you should face danger, but the seeker is always trying to find comfort. I mean, why would it challenge it? Even in this path, it doesn't really challenge it. But by keep repetitively listening, it can't help but begin to notice it, and these things unfold. But alone, it won't. Like, it really amazes me sometimes when people are listening to my talk for years, still when I say, what are you feeling in your body, or what's happening in the body, or what's happening now, they're kind of shocked. They're like, well, and because the energy by itself won't naturally explore. It might explore if it's really, really suffering and it's really uncomfortable, but most of the time it will try to go and find relaxation or relief. And the most profound part of the spiritual path is when actually the illusion is being seen through. But that takes so much energy to see through it. And it's not even you that sees through it. It's kind of like what's false keeps being exposed. But who wants to, honestly, if you're really honest with yourself, do you really want some of the games exposed? Like the idea of no longer having the high from falling in love, or the high of connecting, no longer being able to connect like you used to, no longer being attached to yourself in any way. Like sometimes, even though the person thinks about the bliss it will feel, the love it will feel, like, does it really want to give up these games? Like that moment of intimacy, that high when you meet someone and you connect, that will go, because you'll still have connection with people, but in a way you won't, not like before. And by itself, the seeker will try to ignore that, rationalize it, because it just is like, oh, a little bit more juice. But doesn't even need to, even with money, like money's a huge one. Or, yes, but I need to get money, and that addiction to living with the idea of money.
Yeah, this topic of addiction has been very present, actually, throughout my whole life. Various sorts of addiction, not really substance addiction as much, because my body couldn't take it, but behavior and all sorts of, and especially lately what's coming out of this system, exposing itself a lot, is the love addiction. And love, approval and appreciation. I think Byron Katie has a saying that something like, God spare me from the need for love, approval and appreciation. And I just keep seeing these, how strong they are in the system, and it's like it's almost like a chemical addiction, really.
The two biggest ones are love and money, and I sometimes think that love is the biggest one, because you get such a chemical high from someone loving you. It's so crazy. It's not even necessarily you loving them, it's the perception that somebody loves you, and that moment of being complete. This gives such a huge high. But you have to feel like there's something missing in order to have that high. It won't work otherwise. It can't work. There can be attraction and there can be a drawing together, but there really has to be, in order to get that high, that huge high, something missing.
Right, and then the higher is especially high when what that person seems to have is things that you find missing in yourself. So I've really looked at that, like what are the types that I'm most attracted to, and it really is like it seems like they'd complete something, or there's a strong polarity. But also patterns, like I think the body repeating childhood traumas, like being drawn to people where the relationship would be quite unstable, for instance, or being drawn to danger. Because if it's just peaceful and normal and quiet, and there's not that excitement and that high and that rush of feeling like you achieve or reach something.
That could possibly still play out, but underneath that, what you get the high from is that completing you. So that could still play out, as in the body could still move towards people that it's familiar with. So if it's familiar with more dangerous people, then it might still, or more particular types of people, it might still move there. But that addiction to that completing you, so that's what gives you the high. But a lot of that will fall away. So often if you've been abused as a child, then you'll be drawn to more abusive relationships, and that sort of will fall away. But then also there's going to be the tendency of the body of what it's used to. So if it's used to somebody dominant, then that might always stay. But that idea that it completes you in some way, because even in abusive relationships, we are not even conscious of this, but in some way that's adding to you, because that's validating you as a victim. That's adding, like often when you're in an abusive relationship, you feel afraid of them, and then you go to them for comfort. And this gives you completion. This gives a sense of completion. So you feel scared of them, and then at the same time you look to them as the saviour, as you're not even conscious of it, but then you look to them for comfort, and the high that you get when they're being the nice version, when they're giving you the comfort and the love, and then they're the ones that scare you, and then but that's where it begins to get really into suffering, because then you fall when they're being abusive, and then you're high when they're being loving. But it gives you such a high.
I relate to that totally. Like, I've been looking at it a lot lately, because in some way it looks like life is, it's almost like it's happening despite my will, because the ego's will would be to continue doing the patterns. But there's a stronger driving force that's always been there, that's been partly playing out the patterns with all that it involved, the high and the lows, and partly pushing through. Like, there's something that's deconstructing that lately. And then there has been a stronger willingness to have all this exposed, almost like the feeling of having reached I don't know if hit rock bottom, but it's more like having reached the end of the rope. Like, there's a strong awareness, or more like a sense that something's coming to an end. And I don't know what it is, because of course I don't know. Awakening will happen whenever it happens, but what has been so far just doesn't want to play out the same way anymore. It can't. And then there's this limbo of this in-between place of just sitting with this chemistry of lack or fear, and it's mostly almost without a reason lately. It's more visceral and more physical now than it used to be when it was just emotional. So now it's acting out on
that. To me, from the experience of what happened in Lisa, that is you really getting to the source of it. Because actually that's the basis of the person feels lack and fear. Not that lack and fear doesn't arise when the person's not there, but when the separation here happens, that's the two main feelings of separation. And your whole life they've been playing underneath since you've been identified. And so that's the truth of it. They don't have a reason. You're uncomfortable, your suffering was never because of the flow. It was because of separation. But this is really, really painful to sit through, because sometimes even when you have a story, you can do some form of emotional release, because you can use the story to cry, you can use the story to understand, you can use the story to get somewhere in some little bit of a way. But when you're just really getting to those raw emotions, there's nothing that your mind can do about it. It can say, okay, I'm going to feel the feelings, I'll talk it out, but it really can't, in a way. It's like they're beginning to really be exposed, and it can't find a place to go with them. They just are there. And that's difficult. Like, I feel I was very lucky that, well, not lucky, it's just karma, the way it played out, but I had the space to actually just lay in bed. And it is hard when you've got to do a job, but that's the perfect karma. Like, everybody has their perfect karma, because it's just hard to get energy together sometimes.
But the laying in bed, because I thought about that too, the laying in bed is very uncomfortable too. Like, there's something that doesn't want to just stay with it. And whenever I actually do stay and go through something, like you also often say that it's in the feeling, that in that stillness or in the space, and whenever I do sit through it, then that space reveals itself. And throughout my whole life, there's been actually lots of times, like, experiences of awakening or awakeness, and most of them have come through these toughest times. Like, there's been this flip-flopping happening. And but then I realized recently it just doesn't, like, you would definitely do anything, like look on the outside or find a magic pill or a certain treatment that would balance out everything, and to not have to, because actually, I mean, it's really, if I just look at it in a more detached way, that I can do that sometimes, but at other times it's just so freaking frustrating. Like, it doesn't let me sleep at times, or if I do sleep, then it comes through the dreams, and it's like this inner golem somehow that just
And I
and
really
then I was
wouldn't,
going,
I wouldn't let it, I wouldn't look at it in a timeline, like I felt this for this period or how long will I would just keep letting it come, everything, invite it in, because it just becomes a new place for your mind to sit if you begin to get into the comparison of how long you've had it or how long you've been doing it. Like everything is welcome. It's that all suffering came from that illusion that you're someone, and then the resistance to it all. And yes, it's stronger now because there's been so many years that have perpetuated that. And yes, I agree with looking into these methods to balance the body out, but ultimately it's like everything is welcome. Your freedom is in the stopping of trying to push anything out. That really is the freedom.
yeah, I was trying to understand it,
Yeah.
because it actually doesn't make any sense. It's not linear. It's like, there's been this high and there's beautiful things unfolding in the flow of life, actually. And then the mind would think it's going to go linearly up now, or it's going to be like this. And then there's a, dip of, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, why is there more pain arising now? It doesn't make any sense. It's exactly at the time when I start doing more of the things that are fun or following passions, or actually comes a lot with creative expression, because it has such a strong emotional component for me. Then the emotions get stirred up even more. And yeah, it's funny, it's just not logical. And the mind tries to understand and plan it and figure it out. And it just doesn't work that way.
No, not at all. Not
There
at
was
all.
one thing I wanted to ask you, because you had mentioned it once, and I found that really interesting. And I started to look at it, but didn't quite get the knack of it. So you said that when you actually get something in the flow, like when you do get the validation or connection, or let's say validation, that it reinforces actually the sense of lack.
It reinforces it, but in the moment,
In the moment, it feels great. That's
yeah,
why I wondered, like, what does she mean?
in the moment that falls away. So the lack falls away, not totally, but there's a portion, and then it feels euphoric, and you feel like you've connected, not intellectually, but the feelings feel more connected, and you feel like you go out into that experience more. But you're not conscious of that, but that's what happens. But over time, it keeps validating the fear. It's like maybe it's, you could put it like a drug addict. Taking the drugs isn't going to make the drug go away. You just want the drugs more. Every time you take the drugs, then you want it more and more and more. It's like a drug. Not that you should stop it. If, as a seeker, you try to stop seeking, you'll make yourself depressed. When you feel like seeking, you have to do it. All I'm doing is exposing the game, so it's not happening unconsciously. But to try to stop seeking, when I used to be in the Buddhist group and they used to all try to stop seeking, it led to lots of depression, I think. Like sitting there, and it's interesting to sit through it and to not run after things, and that's really interesting to see the pain there. But if the seeker's there, you've got to be honest that the seeker's there. So then you can, if you're laying there and the seeker's really strong, then the seeker's going to be wanting to go somewhere. So even putting your attention on your feelings is a good thing, because the seeker wants to go somewhere. It can't just stay there. The seeker is a movement in time. But every time you do that game, what it's doing is it's releasing more of those chemicals of lack. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just like a drug addict. So you feel not enough, and then when you get that person, you feel enough. So deep down underneath, the assumption's made, yes, I'm not enough. I need to maintain this person or this thing. And then over time of repetitively doing that, you then begin to feel an underlying lack, underlying anxiety or discomfort. Because by getting it, you're agreeing, you're validating that it's much better to get it than not have it. Because when you don't have it, you're not enough. But you're not even conscious of this. This is happening at a chemical level. Just like with my training of Khaleesi, she's not conscious of the training. But over time, when you repeat a habit with a dog, eventually the dog begins to do it. So it's like a habit of chemicals being released in the body. Yeah. It's really such a deep thing, separation. And this is why we say, or it's said, that it really is grace, because you can't understand it, but seemingly part of the deconstruction is the exposing of the illusion. There's two parts. There's the exposing that you are that wholeness, which is the experiencer, and that you're nothing in the experience. You are that which is experiencing this, and you're everything in the experiencer. So that's one part. And then the other part is the collapsing of that seeking energy. And that is over time. That's like a lifetime's work. Even here, like there's been huge awakenings. This body still has the momentum towards these old habits, these karmas, even though there is no longer like this amnest that's pulled in here, which is a huge awakening and shift, and so much fell away with that. There's still the momentum towards, so say if a strong emotion comes up, I'll find my hand in the cookie jar. Oh, hello. Oh, sugar, I feel sad.
Yeah, I have my favorite crash for sure.
So the body's got its, so, and I think that's going to take many generations if we don't kill ourselves as humans to come out. Like the awakening is a collective thing. It's not an individual thing. It seems like that, but it's a collective thing. And then as more and more people awaken, the next generation will be less identified than the next generation, where you can even see it now that in the younger generations, they're understanding and hearing this a lot quicker than the older generations. I'm sorry, guys, if you're older. Like, not all the time, and that's not always the case, but a lot of the time it is, and it's nothing personal. It's just like the computers. You know how younger generation is so much better? Like, they're so much better on the iPad because we're genetically putting it in. They say in rats that just in one generation a rat can be traumatized. So you traumatize the mother rat with smoke, then instantly the next generation are afraid of smoke. They instantly are afraid of it. So as these things begin to fall away in the older generations, then the younger generations will be less identified, so have less stuff to move through. So in another 20 generations, it'll be a lot quicker and easier. Maybe this subject won't even exist anymore. It won't be needed.
Yeah, and in a way, it's like it's humbling and relieving at the same time to think that this is actually not so personal.
Not at all. It's collective.
It's a larger movement of life, and if life is doing this awakening thing in the way that it's doing it now, like through the pain, through the depression, through the highs and lows, and it's just what's happening. Like, it's not that the I is doing it wrong, because there's such a strong conditioning to think that if you feel sad or blue or see things a certain way or whatever, that then you're just not doing it right, or there's something wrong with your mind, or you should focus on positive feelings. Or it's like that. I was reading this book about depression, about what a taboo it is, that it's easier for people to admit to alcoholism than to admit to, actually something that's so pervasive in our culture, and how many people actually kill themselves because of that. And lately there's been, it goes in phases, but also sometimes comes this beautiful sense of this is really so not personal, and who knows, maybe what's being done here now is for the next generations, or for whatever. Like, it is totally, it's just the flow of life, the way.
And this is what our society does, and this is what's really sad about our society, but it will change, is that they say happiness is your responsibility. So if you're unhappy, then you've done something wrong. And this is partly why depression is so shameful, because with alcoholism, we can kind of understand that it's uncontrollable, but we think that our happiness is controllable. And so therefore, the people, if you have depression or if you don't go along with the flow, there is something desperately wrong with you, which isn't the case at all. And it's the same with mental illnesses of any type. It's totally not accepted in our society, and they're not even mental illnesses. That it's just that they become mental illnesses because of the way that our society is structured. Like, you don't get mentally ill dogs. You don't get mentally ill. Like, they all have a reason as to why they're functioning like that. But our society is rejecting so much that it makes it worse. So then, as well as having a brain that's thinking differently, they quickly begin to be told that there's something wrong with them and that they're bad.
Mm.
You do get dogs that maybe have learning difficulties or something like that, but you don't see mentally ill dogs. I mean, maybe our society would call dogs that have to be put down because they're vicious are mentally ill. But if you look at that and you look at dog research, I find dogs fascinating to study. Like, they're not actually vicious. They just have become vicious in our society because they were a more dominant dog that's job was to protect the pack. And then the owners didn't understand this, so they kept encouraging that aggression. And then our society says that's a bad dog, it's a wrong dog. There's something wrong with that dog, so we put it down. So if you have these kids growing up in an environment where you're only allowed to be a man or a woman, and you're only to be allowed to think in a certain way and in certain boxes, then over time, as well as their creative and alternative thinking, they then begin to be told there's something wrong with them and that they're bad. And so then it adds on to that identity of feeling not enough, feeling lack. So they keep getting encouraged, these chemicals of lowness, not enough, feeling different. And then by the encouragement of those chemicals over time, then they become very unstable because they're having huge sways of chemicals. It's so obvious to me why our society goes the way it does. It's so obvious.
And basically also because the sense of self-worth is so externally based. Like, because I was looking at what happens here in the process. So, I see all the different ways in which it searches or what it attaches itself to. And of course, a big part of it is the relationships and the love addiction. And then it's on every level, though. It's like what it needs to feel useful in the world. Like, am I doing something useful? Am I contributing? Like, for instance, if I can't work as much because of whatever's going on in the system, there's a sense of guilt of, well, I'm not doing enough or whatever. And then with the creativity, it's very funny too, because I noticed how much it looks for self-value in that. Like, now that I'm drawing more and doing such stuff, it's like there's that short high of validation when somebody really loves it. But then, like you said, I've been watching it, and it really is an addiction, because then it wants more of that. And then it becomes such a conflicted thing, because on one level it just wants to create and express and play with shapes and colors, and and this has been since I was small, and I was doing this perfectionism and attachment to the result was always in the way, because I was conditioned that my value somehow depended on the result of, if it looks good or people praise it, or so then it starts to look for value in these things too, even in the outcome of creativity or in
and then
which kills creativity. Actually.
It does, and this has been happening for so many years. Like with Khaleesi, I can condition her so quickly, a lot of the time, and so you just think in the first year of your life you learnt so much from your mum and dad, and then also you were genetically passed on. So if your mum had a disposition towards depression, you will pass that on. But I don't think it's that you have depression, and I don't think it's bad in any way. I think it's your job to work out your parents' and your grandparents' karma. Like, not your job personally, but that's what's happening, is that it's all being worked out. Then, so if your mum had depression or your dad had depression, then they were acting that out on you. So they were conditioning you in that way. I sometimes think that everybody in our whole society should be given benefits. It's like, like all these things that we come in with that have got to be deconstructed or let go of. And when you're waking up, you are waking up for your mum or your dad or whoever passed on that energy, because there isn't separate entities. There's a movement of life happening, which is really beautiful. So in the story of Jesus, how he's like, the story is that he died for everybody's sins. And that's really what you're doing. But it's not everybody else's sins, because you could say in a way it's your sins as wholeness. So it's like waking up it's not losing your karma, it's cleaning, it's dropping it of the whole world. It's really beautiful. So the way that they expressed it in the Jesus story, which is amazing that it's come through, and it's so misunderstood, I think, but that idea that he died for everybody's sins, of course he did. Because when you are losing these ideas and seeing these ideas and they're coming to light and they're no longer being acted out, it's being let go for your mother for your grandmother, for your father, your granddad, and all those generations before. It's like a train effect, because nothing belongs to you. We always assume that this pattern belongs to us, but nothing does. It's information which is being passed on, and there's no point where you start or you end. It's one life, one energy expressing itself. It's so sweet and so sad at the same time. Like, I love the Jesus story, and I really haven't studied Christianity that much. I didn't grow up very much with religion, even though England is Christian. I didn't know that much about it. And I went to Catholic school, but because I wasn't Catholic, they didn't make me do all those practices. But when I watch or hear or read about the story of Jesus' crucifixion, I just see it as an awakening story. And I understand all the signs. Like, I understand Judas. I understand everything that they're saying in it, as the way that I understand the Buddha's waking up story as well. And the moment on the cross where he's screaming out, "Why did you forsake me, Father?" And then the bringing back to life. It's so beautiful, his story. And I just love that idea in the way that it's said, that he died for everyone's sins. He died for your sins.
And it just seems that there's somehow, it just has its own intelligence, the way it unfolds.
Yeah, it really does.
I can see how the me tries to understand it, or still takes it. I mean, it can't help it. It's just what the me is doing. It's taking it personally. The whole process is being taken personally.
It can't help it.
And it's hilarious. Like, something sees it, and at the same time, it's still ongoing. It has a momentum. And and then, like, I think the me is just addicted to that sense of identity and to figuring itself out and stuff. And then sometimes I just have to, I have to, sometimes surrender happens in the sense of it probably has its own intelligence, and I can't control that anyway. It'll happen the way it happens. And however much pain it involves, or joy, or whatever, it's just not in my hands. I mean, some things seem to be in my hands because of this appearance of free will and things you can do and figure out amino acids and stuff. Now I want to put my whole family on amino acids, because indeed there's stuff that's been passed on, a lot of stuff. But in a way, it just does it the way it does it, and that's like the words that come are like a divine helplessness.
It is. But in another way, the divine helplessness, just because I know that a lot of people, when they come to these talks, they sometimes do feel a bit broken because they've tried in life and everything. Like, that also has to be challenged, that idea of helplessness, because everything that's appearing now comes from the source, which is you. But it's just not conscious, like we imagine as a human, but everything is that source exploding into creation. So everything is self. So everything is that innate sense of being, that being that never changed. So the reason I bring that up is because often I'm careful, because when people do feel like they come to this subject, they do begin to feel helpless to life. And it's not even that, it's even beyond that. Because actually, really, you are the creator. So it's absolute strength. So there is a surrendering in to that absolute strength, which is kind of crazy. So and surrendering that helplessness that surrenders into this strength and power that is creating. It's kind of a terrible contradiction.
Yeah, it is. Like, for me, it seems most easily accessed whenever that happens, through this sense that, or when I invite the sense that whatever is arising, even if it's intense discomfort or conflict or anything, that too is perfect or has its own intelligence, that the perfection and intelligence in that is beyond what the mind can grasp. The mind doesn't get it.
And then that movement might be happening, like it moves back to that creator, and that's where the power is. But I don't mean a power on the human force as such, but that power and that stillness, and that it's not confidence on a human sense, but like
maybe trust.
Yeah, like an invincibility, that is who you are, that creator, that source of all things. So it is absolutely helpless, the person in the flow of things. So the Manuela feels helpless to it, and it's totally correct that Manuela has no control over it. But then as that begins to be seen through, then there's something else that's the creator of all, and that's your source. But it's not consciously creating like the human imagines. It's prior to, but you can't quite say prior, but we'll say it prior to that. Like that's already gone off into time.
And then it flip-flops back and forth between these.
Still movement, still movement. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was lovely talking to you.
Yeah, that was so nice. Thank you. And thank you for having the video on, because I'm sure that everyone at home that's watching is so grateful to be able to actually see you speaking. It makes there's such a sweetness when you can actually relate and see the person. But again, if anyone does it and then feels really uncomfortable, I'm always happy to change that and put a picture over it or something, because I can understand that you're worried that about work, or I know that people have so many judgments over this subject. But I'm kind of full in it. My name is fully plastered with non-duality. I have no escape.
Yeah, and then I also looked at like, well, so who is it that feels threatened, and what? What's the big deal, really?
Yeah.
There is a nervousness about it, but in the end.
The only issue I have with my name always being associated with it is I don't always want to talk about it. So sometimes when I meet new people, I sometimes don't always fully give my name, or I'll mumble my name or something, not because of shame, but because I don't always want to be talking about it. So it's like when you're a hairdresser, if people know you're a hairdresser, they're like, oh, can you cut my hair?
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, and so this is the same with non-duality. Oh, so tell me what non-duality is. And you're like, well, that's quite a big subject. I think it will take quite a few sessions. Yeah. They're nice. Thanks, Manuela.
Thank you, Lisa.
Sending you lots of love.
And you too.
Bye. Lisa in HD. I'm not sure what camera I'm on now. Yeah, I'll go back to all the things that be like, Lisa, there's no sound, you're out of sync. Hey, Beth. Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I've been practicing. I've kind of I understand what the problem is. It's actually not a new camera, it's my computer camera, but I have this other camera. That's the one that goes out of sync, and I think it goes out of sync because it's so good and it's such high resolution that it begins to not be able to put it to YouTube as quickly, I think. Wow, this is a big question. This is from EB. Hey, EB. Wow, what country do you come from? But I'm so glad that you put that as EB, because I would never be able to read your language. EB. I'll be like... Thanks for this talk. Please forgive me for the following awfully long text. That's okay. But just so people know, I am dyslexic and I can read. I don't know if everyone knows what dyslexia is, but I do get jumbled, and I also sometimes can't recognize words, or I make up words. People have very bizarre ideas about what dyslexia is. I just see it as a different way of seeing things and thinking, and our society says bad, wrong. What you told at the beginning really resonated with me. I also don't justify what you say, like I'm not very good at giving it much life. So forgive me for that as well. I'm also 32 years old. Also, oh, I'm not 32. I'm way older than that. I'm 36. In a few months. Small. I'm also 32 years old, very feminine and sensitive male, living in in Latvia. Small country at the east border of Russia. Yeah, I know Latvia. Hiding my wrong sexuality from everyone, including my 2 brothers and parents. Fear and desolation. But strangely enough, it started the seeker in me. It started with reading Tolle, using drugs, listening to different philosophers and so on. Of course, if that body can't be itself, then of course it's going to be feeling more and more discomfort. Not that anyone can, but some people manage to follow into society's ideas and goals and projections better than others. So of course, if you're a little bit different from the norm, the seeker's going to come, because the body will begin to get uncomfortable faking it and living a lie, listening to different philosophers and so on. Last year, spring, I went to 11-day silent retreat with Muji. Maybe because of avoiding my sexual issues, it resulted with very erratic and psychotic false awakening experiences. I ended up thinking that I am Buddha. Oh, serious, Lisa. Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. It's just that everybody's had this and everybody's done this, or people have these sorts of experiences. I'm wanting to awaken everybody in the airport of Lisbon. Okay. Yeah, it took 4 policemen to finally arrest me and send to psychiatric ward. Okay, not everybody has that extreme, but often people have the initial feeling of I am enlightened. 12 days there and pain and suffering to my scared family. To me it was like some scary but exciting adventure. I am less scared of being a loony than being gay, so I hope facing it I will be able to finally dissolve into oneness. Yeah. Well, I don't think there's a question there. But yeah, I mean, it all is about being honest, being who you truly are. And from such a young age, we're told who we have to be, and then we create this identity, and then we seek to fulfill this identity. And this creates so much suffering. You just wouldn't believe how much suffering it creates. And people get as far